Srimad Ananto Koti Vaishnavindaki, Nama Charja Sharayastakturiki, Remza Kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sri Gaura Bhaktivinoda Sri Radha Krishna Gokopana Shama Kunda Radha Kundi Giri Govardhanaki, Braj Bhumi Shri Vrindama Dhamaki, Navadip Mayapur Dhamaki, Purushtam Chetra Jaganapuri Dhamaki, Ganga Maiki, Jamuna Maiki, Bhakti Devi Ki, Tulasi Maharani, Samaveta Bhakta Brindaki, Jai Nitai Go Premanandi. All glories to some devotees, all glories to some devotees, all glories to some devotees, all glories, Lotus feet of Sri Guru and Sri Garanga, all glories to Sri Prabhupada Ki. There's an interesting story. One time, I think it happened in Los Angeles, and Prabhupada came into his room and they said, Prabhupada, there's a bell here for you, there's a buzzer for you to press. So if you need us, you just press the buzzer and we'll come. So the devotees left the room. And a few moments later, Prabhupada pressed the buzzer. And the devotees came running in, yes, Prabhupada, what do you need? Oh, no, I was just testing to see if it worked. So I'm tempted, you know, just to press it and see what happens. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Bhūyo namaḥ sad-vṛjina-cchide asatām. Bhūyo namaḥ sad-vṛjina-cchide asatām. Bhūyo namaḥ sad-vṛjina-cchide satām. Long way away. Asambhavāyākhila-sattva-mūrtaye. 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 Bhūyo namaḥ sad-vṛjina-cchide satām. Asambhavāyākhila-sattva-mūrtaye. puṁsāṁ punaḥ pāramahaṁsya. Āśrame. puṁsāṁ punaḥ pāramahaṁsya āśrame. puṁsāṁ punaḥ pāramahaṁsya āśrame. Vyavasthitānām anumṛgya-dāśuṣe. Vyavasthitānām anumṛgya-dāśuṣe. Vyavasthitānām anumṛgya-dāśuṣe. puṁsāṁ punaḥ pāramahaṁsya āśrame. Vyavasthitānām anumṛgya-dāśuṣe. Bhūyo namaḥ sad-vṛjina-cchide satām. asambhavāyākhila-sattva-mūrtaye. puṁsāṁ punaḥ pāramahaṁsya āśrame. Vyavasthitānām anumṛgya-dāśuṣe. Bhūyo namaḥ sad-vṛjina-cchide satām. Asambhavāyākhila-sattva-mūrtaye. puṁsāṁ punaḥ pāramahaṁsya āśrame. Vyavasthitānām anumṛgya-dāśuṣe. Vaishnavis? Bhūyaḥ. Again. Namaḥ. My obeisances. Sat. Of the devotees, or the pious. Vṛjina. Distresses. Chide. The liberator. Asatām. Of the atheists, the non-devotee-demons. Asambhavāya. Cessation of further unhappiness. Akhila. Complete. Sattva. Goodness. Mūrtaye. Unto the personality. Puṁsāṁ. Of the transcendentalists. Punaḥ. Again. Pāramahaṁsya. The highest stage of spiritual perfection. Āśrame. In the status. Vyavasthitānām. Particularly situated. Anumṛgya. The destination. Dāśuṣe. One who delivers. Translation. I again offer my respectful obeisances unto the form of complete existence and transcendence, who is the liberator of the pious devotees from all distresses and the destroyer of the further advances in atheistic temperament of the non-devotee-demons. For the transcendentalists who are situated in the topmost spiritual perfection, he grants their specific destinations. Responsively, please. I again offer my respectful obeisances unto the form of complete existence and transcendence, who is the liberator of the pious devotees from all distresses and the destroyer of the further advances in atheistic temperament of the non-devotee-demons. For the transcendentalists who are situated in the topmost spiritual perfection, he grants their specific destinations. Srila Prabhupada's purport. Lord Sri Krishna is the complete form of all existence, both material and spiritual. Akhila means complete, or that which is not khila, inferior. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita, there are two kinds of nature, prakriti, namely the material nature, and the spiritual nature, or the external and internal potencies of the Lord. The material nature is called apara, or inferior, and the spiritual nature is called superior, or transcendental. Therefore, the form of the Lord is not of the inferior material nature. He is complete transcendence, and he is murti, or having a transcendental form. The less intelligent men who are unaware of his transcendental form describe him as impersonal Brahman. But Brahman is simply the rays of his transcendental body, Yasha Prabha. The devotees who are aware of his transcendental form render him service, Therefore, the Lord also reciprocates by his causeless mercy, and thus delivers his devotees from all distresses. The pious men who follow the rulings of the Vedas are also dear to him. Therefore, the pious men of this world are also protected by him. The impious and the non-devotees are against the principles of the Vedas, and so such persons are always hampered from making advances in their nefarious activities. Some of them who are especially favored by the Lord are killed by him personally, as in the cases of Ravana, Hiranyakashipu, and Kavaca. And thus such demons get salvation and are thereby checked from further progress in their demoniac activities. Just like the kind father, either in his favor upon the devotees or his punishment of the demons, he is ever kind to everyone, because he is the complete existence for all individual existence. The pāramahaṁsya stage of existence is the highest perfectional stage of spiritual values. According to Srimati Kunti Devi, the Lord is factually understood by the pāramahaṁsas only. As there is a gradual realization of the transcendence from impersonal Brahman to localized Paramatma to the personality of Godhead, Puruṣottam, Lord Krishna, similarly, there is the gradual promotion of one's situation in the spiritual life of sannyas. Kutichak, Bahudak, Parivrajaka-charya, and Pāramahaṁsya are all gradual progressive stages in the renounced order of life, sannyas. And Queen Kunti, the mother of the Pandavas, has spoken about them in her prayers for Lord Krishna. Canto 1, Chapter 8. The Pāramahaṁsas are generally found among the impersonalists and the devotees, but according to Srimad Bhagavatam, as clearly stated by Kunti Devi, pure bhakti yoga is understood by the Pāramahaṁsas, and Kunti Devi has especially mentioned that the Lord descends paritranaya sadhunam, especially to award bhakti yoga to the Pāramahaṁsas. So ultimately, the Pāramahaṁsas, in the true sense of the term, are unalloyed devotees of the Lord. So Prabhupada here is addressing this point where, in the verse where he says, for the transcendentalists who are situated in the topmost, he grants their specific destinations. So in this verse it's talking about both the impersonalists and the personalists. And so here, Prabhupada is actually pointing out, in reality, true Pāramahaṁsas are devotees of the Lord. Because in the verse we see it says, where is it, in the second last, pāramahaṁsya. So in the verse is referring to either the impersonalists or the personalists as Pāramahaṁsas, but we see that Prabhupada refines that even further and mentions actually that Pāramahaṁsas really can only be devotees of Krishna. So those who accept the path of bhakti yoga are the factual Pāramahaṁsas. Since the Lord is very kind to everyone, the impersonalists who accept bhakti as the means of merging in the existence of the Lord in his impersonal Brahmajyoti are also awarded their desired destination. He has assured everyone in the Bhagavad Gita 4:11, yayatamam pravadante. According to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti, there are two classes of Pāramahaṁsas, namely the Brahmanandis, the impersonalists, and the Premanandis, devotees, and both are awarded their desired destination. Although the Premanandis are more fortunate than the Brahmanandis, both the Brahmanandis and the Premanandis are transcendentalists, and they have nothing to do with the inferior material nature of the existential miseries of life. So, yeah, very wonderful purport by Srila Prabhupada. And it's the kind of purport you could take in so many different directions. But here we see that Parikshit Maharaj has questioned Shukadeva Goswami. He's asking him to explain the creation. So, after a few preliminary verses, we see in the last verse and this verse, and then through to the end of the chapter, what happens is that Shukadeva Goswami is actually offering prayers to Krishna. And there's an interesting verse, I can't remember where I was reading it, but it may have been the previous one. Oh yeah, it's the previous one actually, in the purport. Then Srila Prabhupada talks about the nature of the devotee, how when the devotee, especially a greatly advanced devotee like Shukadeva Goswami, they actually understand that everything they have, everything they do is simply by the mercy of Krishna. Any capacity they have You look at the materialistic people, for instance. They're going to think, by my greatness I was able to achieve this. But you see, with a devotee has a very different mood. And even we can look at the end of the Bhagavad Gita, that Arjuna, he says to Krishna, right at the end, he said, Tvat prasadam-maya-chuta. He says, by your mercy, my Lord, I have understood. And then Kadashe vachanam, and I'll do what you say. And this is the understanding of the devotee, or this is the mood of approach of a devotee, that he actually understands that everything that is going on, everything he's able to achieve, everything he can do, is simply by the mercy of Krishna. And without the mercy of Krishna, he feels that he's completely lost. And we see the prayers of Queen Kunti. She's praying to Krishna because Krishna was about to leave Hastinapur and head back to Dwarka. And we see that she came to Krishna. She's praying to Krishna like, you're leaving us now when just okay, we've won this war, yes, but then all our enemies, they've got it in for us. So if you leave, where are we going to be? We're going to be lost. We're going to be at the mercy of all these people. So Prabhupada points out, obviously that the Kuntis are very, very advanced Vaishnava, and this is the mood of the advanced Vaishnava, is to understand that anything that happens, anything that I'm able to do, is simply by the mercy of the Lord. And even if we look in simple terms, Krishna explains in the Bhagavad Gita, he's the fire of digestion, he's the light in the sun and the moon, he's the taste in the vegetables. So every experience we have, the devotee is able to see how Krishna is present everywhere. Just the fact that you can eat something and taste it, this taste is coming from Krishna. And then that you can cook it. You're cooking it on fire. Where does the fire come from? It comes from Krishna. When you eat it, the fact that you can digest it, what's that? Krishna says, I'm the fire of digestion. I'm the ability in man. So, and these chapters in the Bhagavad Gita are very important for us, because if we can study these and take these teachings to heart, then we start to really get a clear perspective of our position, of how infinitesimal we are, how small we are, and how great and merciful Krishna is. We can understand that actually everything that is going on, and this is especially this 10th chapter of the Gita, it very clearly points out, or very clearly explains Krishna's mighty nature. And then at the end he says, but all these things, these glorious and wonderful creations, and you look at the material world, it's truly amazing. It's truly a beautiful place. Wherever you go, you see so many great and powerful things. But then what does Krishna say? He says, it springs from the spark of my splendor. So if we can appreciate how amazing Krishna's creation is, I remember as a young devotee, we always had this kind of mood that if anyone was appreciating anything in the material world, we'd say, oh, that's Maya Prabhu, But actually, if we could, I personally, I think that type of consciousness is Maya, because we need to see that how everything is connected to Krishna, that everything is nothing but Krishna's energy. If we're seeing anything as being separate from Krishna, that is illusory. And that's the materialist. They're seeing that everything, they don't even accept that Krishna exists. So in that sense, they're seeing everything separate from God. But an advanced transcendentalist sees how everything is nothing but Krishna's energy. Everything is nothing but an expansion of Krishna's energy. And of course, in our position, we're aspiring for this consciousness. And in this way, when you can see how everything is coming from Krishna and it's nothing but his energy, then in that consciousness, we're always able to be thinking of the Lord. We're always able to be connected with Krishna. And this is another thing that becomes is very apparent in this section of the Bhagavatam, is how the devotees, how the pāramahaṁsas are completely dependent upon Krishna for everything. And we see here, Shukadeva Goswami, before he answers Parikshit Maharaj's question, he prays to Krishna he glorifies Krishna, and he prays to Krishna to guide him. And we see in the process of bhakti, as given to us by Srila Prabhupada, he's also established the same kind of, I guess, formulas for us, or the program for us, so that we can start to see Krishna in everything. Just like, we come to the temple in the morning, we're singing, we're glorifying Krishna. We take darshan deeds, we're singing prayers to glorify Krishna, prayers to glorify the spiritual master, etc. Then, we do Bhagavatam class. Before we start the Bhagavatam class, we sing Madhava, meditating on the Lord, and we sing on the Lord Bhagavatam, offering respects to the Supreme Personality of God, Vasudeva. So, you see different devotees, they'll chant various verses and prayers before they start the Bhagavatam. Again, offering respects to, glorifying the Lord. There's those two verses, Srimad Swakata Krishna, I can't remember the other one, that devotees regularly chant before Bhagavatam class. But they're glorifying Krishna. And then also before we take Krishna Prasad, we also chant prayers, saying how Krishna, you kindly appeared before me in the form of prasad to help me to control my senses. So the devotees are always trying to see Krishna in everything and trying to appreciate how everything we're able to do is simply by the mercy of Krishna. Any capacity I might have is simply by the mercy of Krishna. And any achievement I might have is simply by the mercy of Krishna. And we see Prabhupada was a very good example of that. That in his life, sometimes, people would say, oh, Swamiji, you've done something magical here. And he would say, actually, no, I have done nothing. I've simply tried to follow the instructions of my spiritual master. He would never take credit for himself. And this is the mood of an advanced devotee. But not just like it's some false kind of humility thing, just try, whatever. But actually, my understanding is it comes from deep realization, because they're understanding how simply by trying to follow the instructions of the predecessors, spiritual master, the acharyas, and also ultimately the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that all success comes. Because ultimately we understand that any potency that exists, and this is one of the main instructions really in the 10th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, that any potency that exists, ultimately, as Krishna says, you should know that all glorious and wonderful creations spring from but a spark of my splendor. And Prabhupada in the purport, he talks about how even, like a strong man, someone who's got great prowess, they may not even be a devotee. But we can appreciate that comes from Krishna. Just like, interesting story. One time Prabhupada was traveling on a plane. And Srila Prabhupada was, I think he was in first class, and the devotees were back who were traveling with Prabhupada were in economy. And they came up to see if Prabhupada needed anything. And they noticed that Prabhupada was watching, how they have those screens in the back of the seat. I thought it was the overhead screen, I don't remember. But he was watching a movie. And devotees were shocked. Oh, Srila Prabhupada's watching a movie. But it turned out it was, I'm not sure if it was a Charlie Chaplin movie or Max Linder. Mukunda Maharaj said it was a Max Linder movie, and I think he was on the flight, so he'd probably know. But anyhow, the point is that Prabhupada was watching this movie, and it was one of those silent movies. And the devotees asked Prabhupada why he was watching the movie, and he said he could appreciate the originality in his humor, and that this humor ultimately was coming from Krishna. So we can see that even for someone, a great devotee like Srila Prabhupada, he connects everything to Krishna. So even for someone in a conditioned state like myself, I might think, well, why is he watching this movie? But we can see how Prabhupada sees the original, sees the nature of this humor, and sees how ultimately everything is coming from Krishna. So he connects everything to Krishna. And this is also our aspiration, to try to see how everything ultimately is connected to Krishna. So that anything we see in this world, it may be something very beautiful, it may be whatever, that we see how it's connected to Krishna. There's an interesting story, I think it's somewhat connected to this. Prabhupada it's actually, I can't remember where it took place. I think it happened in Europe somewhere. Yeah, so Prabhupada was traveling around, and one of his servants who was cooking for Prabhupada was having some challenges, interacting with young women and that. And he was just feeling a little bit kind of challenged by it. And so he came to Prabhupada, and he was sort of explaining this to Prabhupada, and so Prabhupada told a story about Yudhisthira and Kunti. So Krishna was talking to Yudhisthira Maharaj and saying, well, but you can see your mother; she's very beautiful. And Yudhisthira saying, yeah, I can see that, but that's okay. And then Krishna was saying, but doesn't this affect you? Don't you? And he said, no, I can see she's beautiful, but I do nothing. And then Prabhupada, he was talking, and just as he was talking, this life member came into his room, and with his young wife, and his wife was very beautiful. And then Prabhupada was saying, it's just like, he said, I can see this woman, she's very beautiful, I am not blind. But what do? I do nothing. Because ultimately, he's seeing how everything is connected to Krishna, how everything's Krishna's energy. And Krishna's energy, as we know, it appears in so many different forms. It appears sometimes very attractive, sometimes very horrific. Just like, in this world, there's so many things you can see that, some things are very attractive, some things are not attractive. But ultimately, we try to understand that all these things are ultimately the energy of Krishna. And if we can have this consciousness, how it's Krishna's energy, then what should then be our next realization or next approach is to understand this is Krishna's energy, therefore engaging in Krishna's service. And in this way, we don't become enamored by these things, we don't become attracted by these things. If we can cultivate this consciousness of seeing how everything is connected to Krishna, how everything is nothing but an expansion of Krishna's energy, either his, as Prabhupada's talking here about, his personal energy, his internal energy, or his external energy, or his marginal energy. All these things are ultimately just expansions of Krishna's energy. So therefore we see, if we understand this, we see he is the proprietor. But the problem comes is when we don't see that everything is an expansion of Krishna's energy, we're thinking that this is the material, that whatever it is, but it's there for me to enjoy. If we're seeing that it's Krishna's energy, we don't have this impetus to try to enjoy it. But if we think it's something else, then we try to enjoy it. And this is when we start to become entangled, is when we discriminate. Well, this is for Krishna, this is for me. Even in devotional service, we do that sometimes. When we're making this discrimination, this is when we become entangled in the modes of material nature. But if we can cultivate this idea, or cultivate this consciousness that, as we read in the Bhagavad Gita how everything is expanded from Krishna. Okay, what does he say? What's that verse he says in the 10th chapter? He says, Aham savasya pravo mata savam prapatate iti matvajantavam buddha bhavasmam bhata. That I am the source of all spiritual material worlds. Everything emanates from me. And the wise who perfectly know this is the point. If you understand this properly, they engage in his devotional service and worship with all their hearts. But not only do we engage in Krishna's service, we engage everything in Krishna's service. Whatever we have, whatever is there, we engage in Krishna's service. Whether it's something that's very attractive or something that is very desirable, we just engage in Krishna's service. And in this way, by engaging things in Krishna's service, we also develop this detachment from trying to enjoy. And this is why the process of bhakti yoga is so wonderful, in that it gives us this opportunity to connect with Krishna through whatever it is we're doing. As Krishna explains, he says, Yat karoshi yadasnasi yat johoshi das yatapashash kuntaya tad kurushamadapana. This is whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you offer, give away, whatever austerities you perform, you do that, O son of Kunti, as an offering to me. Just so sometimes when I travel around, devotees come and they're working and they feel a little bit challenged by the whole work environment, and they say, but I feel like I'm just out there doing karmic activities. But then and they feel like it's kind of taking away from Krishna consciousness. So what I try to encourage them to see is how everything is connected to Krishna. They're out there doing their work, but what do they do with the money? They bring the money home, they use it to maintain their devotee family. So, if we can see the connection for Krishna for everything we're doing, then this is going to help purify our consciousness. But if we see distinction, if we see the separation between things, we think, oh, this is for Krishna, or this is for me, or this is all for me, or whatever, then this is going to cause our consciousness to become more entrenched in material, ideas, material perspectives. And so this is a very important part, or as Prabhupada would sometimes say, it's a key of devotional service. Just like, it's like we see all these things in this world, if they're not connected to Krishna, they just mean zero. They're of no value whatsoever. And Prabhupada would talk about, big skyscraper buildings and jumbo jets and all these different scientific achievements. Without being connected to Krishna, they're of no importance whatsoever. But if you just take this one, Krishna, and you would say they're all zeros. But if you take one, Krishna, you put in front of all these zeros, then all of a sudden you have something very significant, a very, very big number. So this is the idea, is just to take the I out of the center of everything and put Krishna in the center, and put, and just everything is connected to Krishna. And so this is very, very helpful for us to try to cultivate this. Another interesting point that Srila Prabhupada brings out here, or the Acharyas also bring out, is in this verse it appears that Krishna is discriminating between devotees and non-devotees. Right? But we actually see, if we look in Bhagavad Gita, also in the Bhagavatam, there's interesting prayers. I think it's in the 9th chapter of the 1st canto, where Bhishma Dev is offering prayers, because Bhishma Dev is lying on the bed of arrows, and Krishna has come to him, so he can see. So Bhishma Dev can see Krishna as he's living in this world, and also to glorify Bhishma. It's a really interesting story, because, as we know, Yudhisthira was very, very dejected, and actually depressed, as a result of the battle of Kurukshetra, because he was feeling that all these hundreds of millions of people had been killed simply so he could be put on the throne. And Krishna spoke to him about that and tried to convince him that this was not actually the case. Even Srila Vyasadeva tried to speak to him and convince him this was not the case. And then so actually Krishna had a plan. And so they went to see Bhishma Dev, and then Bhishma Dev, lying on this bed of arrows, he'd been lying there for 50-something days. I can't remember how long it was quite a while. He spoke, according to the Mahabharata, he spoke for 50 days. But he'd been lying there for quite a while, because the battle of Kurukshetra had finished. It went for 18 days, and then they did their ablutions down by the river, and they went back to Hastinapur, and he was ruling the kingdom for some time, but still he felt dejected. And then finally they went to see Bhishma Dev. And then Bhishma Dev, through his powerful instructions, was able to destroy all of Yudhisthira Maharaj's doubts. So it's not that Bhishma Dev was more knowledgeable or a greater personality than Krishna, or it's not that he was a greater personality than Vyasadeva, who was the literary incarnation of the Lord. But Krishna wanted to glorify his devotee. It's the same here we see in the Bhagavatam. In my daily reading, I'm reading from the 1st canto, and this morning I was reading the 18th chapter. And Prabhupada, he makes the point there how Parikshit, it's not like he was just some ordinary person, and just because he was thirsty, he got angry with Samika Rishi and cursed him. Because we see that in the womb, how Parikshit was, attacked by the Brahmastra of Ashvatthama, yet he tolerated that. And even as the ruler of the kingdom, he tolerated so many difficulties. So he couldn't tolerate being thirsty? Well, we can understand that this is actually the arrangement of the Lord. So Krishna makes these arrangements to glorify his devotees, or to glorify the process of bhakti. So similarly, when Bhishma Dev was lying on the bed of arrows, Krishna wanted to glorify his devotee and show the greatness of a pure devotee of the Lord. And so he came there with the Pandavas before Bhishma Dev, and all the great sages in the universe were assembled there to hear Bhishma speak. And Bhishma spoke, many wonderful verses and instructions to Yudhisthira Maharaj. And in one of the prayers he's explaining how, I don't remember the verse exactly, but it's 2 verses. But he explains how the Lord appears to be partial. But actually, that's only due to our false ego. when we become freed from false ego, we can see how the Lord is impartial to all. Because for the devotees, he grants them the destination. For the demons, as we see, Krishna explains in the Gita, how he casts them down into lower species of life so they can't perform further sinful activities. He protects them from performing sinful activities. So, as Prabhupada's pointing out here in this purport, Krishna is like a benevolent father. He's like a kind, loving father, and he's always got the best interest of his part and parcels at heart. There's in Sanskrit there's different words for friend. They have bandhu, mitra, and suhrid. So Krishna, as we know in the end of the 5th chapter, he's suhridam sarvadehinam or sarvabhutanam. That he's the well-wishing friend of all living entities. So suhrid, the word literally means that person who has your best interest at heart. And this is Krishna. But it says suhridam sarvabhutanam. He's a well-wishing friend of all living entities, not just some, not just the devotees, not just the human beings, but all living entities, all the human beings, all the animals, all the fish, all the trees, all the germs, just every living entity. And therefore we see, Prahlad Maharaj describes in his prayers, that Krishna descends in all species of life. Not just in this species of life so we can see him, he descends in all species of life to bestow his mercy upon these living entities. He descends as his holy name. He descends in the form of transcendental literature. He descends in the form of prasadam. So that all living entities, get benefit. And even we see that, Srila Prabhupada called Mayapur his place of worship. So I figure when we're in the place of worship, I have to say something about deity worship. Even we see in the form of the deity, he comes as the form of the deity. Prabhupada would often refer to the deity as the archa vigraha, meaning the mercy manifestation of the Lord. And we can understand how is it that the Lord's, the deity is so merciful, because any living entity who has any connection with the deity is benefited. Their life is changed. Just like, you could take a simple thing like offering a piece of fruit to the Lord. So the plant the fruit comes from gets benefit. The person who grows the fruit gets benefit. The person who picks the fruit gets benefit. The person who brings it to market. The person who sells in the market. The person who buys in the market. Anyone who has any connection with that process of getting that piece of fruit onto the deity's plate and offering to Krishna gets benefit. And then the person who takes that gets benefit. So this is the merciful nature of Krishna. And it's just like, Prabhupada would sometimes explain it like an electric wire. It's like, we've got all these electric wires running the roof. Anywhere you touch that wire, you're going to get the charge. You'll get electrocuted. Whether it's here, there, or you go down the light switch, or you go down to the power board, or you go back, down the wires down the road, and you go back to the powerhouse. Wherever you touch it, you're going to get the same charge. And that's the nature of the process of bhakti. Wherever you come into contact with the process of bhakti. Even we see with personalities like Kavaca and Ravan, Hiranyakashipu, they're demoniac. They're completely opposed to devotional service. They're completely opposed to the idea of Krishna or worshipping God. But nonetheless, because they had this contact with Krishna, because they came into contact with Krishna in one form or another, either we see with Kavaca, he was constantly immersed in thoughts of Krishna. He got benefit. He made spiritual advancement. We see it in the story with Hiranyakashipu, same thing. Hiranyaksha, all these personalities, even though they're very, very demoniac, because of this immersion in thought of Krishna, and because ultimately they're killed by Krishna, they get benefit. And we see in the Gita, it says that all those persons who died on the battlefield seeing Krishna got benefit. They got spiritual benefit. What to speak of the devotees? So this is the all-merciful and this suhridam, this well-wishing nature of Krishna. He's got the best interest of every single living entity at heart. He just wants the best for them. And so for us, in our position as either devotees or aspiring devotees of Krishna, to contemplate this, to try to understand this well-wishing nature of Krishna, then this is, if we spend time to reflect on this, how Krishna is making so many different arrangements. We've got wonderful temples. I mean, you can go to practically every country in the world, every city in the world, and you can get Krishna prasadam. You can associate with devotees. You can, most places you can go, you've got a place to stay. I mean, what other society provides that? And by doing these things, you get spiritual advancement. By taking Krishna prasad, sometimes Prabhupada would say, eat your way back to Godhead. That's the nature of this process. That any way we connect with this process, we're getting spiritual benefit. And this is the merciful nature of Krishna. So it's very important for us to contemplate this regularly, and also, to feel a deep sense of gratitude, because Krishna is making so many arrangements. Out of his kindness, he descends to this material world in various incarnations, in the form of a deity, in the form of the holy name. He sends his devotees down here, greatly advanced devotees, simply for our benefit. The deity appears, Prabhupada explains this time and time again, the deity appears simply for our benefit. And Krishna comes to this world, in the form of the various incarnations, simply for our benefit. So I believe it's very helpful for us to reflect on this regularly, but not just reflect on it, but actually to really develop this deep sense of gratitude, how Krishna is making so much arrangement just so that we can come into contact with him, just so that we can overcome our material desires and give up our sinful lives and ultimately return back to the spiritual world. It's a very, very, for me, it's a very important reflection, is just to understand what we have received by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada, by the mercy of the Lord, and to use our time to the best of our capacity to reciprocate with that, to really show that we do appreciate that. I'll finish there. I don't really have anything else to say. Any questions, comments, corrections? Yes, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Wonderful class. I just had a quick question about this point of discrimination, because Srila Prabhupada explains in a purport to Sri Ashila Upanishad that this state of seeing everything in relationship to Krishna can't be imitated. It has to be cultivated in a course of time. And we know that the Madhyamadikari, his main function is to discriminate. And for someone who's a sadhaka, they need to discriminate. So what is, how can we reconcile these two things? That at some point one has to give up the process of discrimination, but simultaneously that process of discrimination can be favorable to coming to a higher state of consciousness.
Yeah, from my understanding, my limited understanding, it's not like at some point you decide, okay, I'm going to give up this process. It's a natural evolution. It's organic, and it's the same with all these things. As we progress in the path of bhakti, it's like in the beginning stage of bhakti, it's somewhat of a chore to get out of bed in the morning. It's somewhat of a chore to have a shower and to go through the whole thing. But then after some time, you start to naturally develop enthusiasm, a taste. You enjoy doing it. One develops enthusiasm. They want to hear the Bhagavatam. They want to hear the holy name. They want to associate with devotees. They want to participate in the kirtan. So as the heart becomes purified, these things naturally evolve. It's just a matter of purification. But right now, because the heart is so contaminated with material desires, then we have to discriminate. It's just like, what it's like with the internet. There's so much kind of stuff bombarding you all the time. Those who are not advanced, if they don't discriminate with what websites they visit or what whatever it is you're doing, then they can very easily be influenced by rather inauspicious kind of content, or even you say it's demoniac content on the web. So we have to exercise, especially as you say, as beginning devotees, we have to exercise discrimination. Otherwise we can become affected. But as we evolve, then it becomes more natural. That you don't have to kind of choose, so you just naturally shy away from things. You know? I'm not sure if I answered your question, though. Okay, thank you.
Prabhu, thank you for the class. I just want to add, like, my question is similar to his. Sometimes, like, in the name of, like, we are conditioned soul, we give this excuse and then we take up facilities for sense gratification. Like, suppose we are having a cycle, then in the name of convenience, we'll do more bhakti. Then we'll purchase one motorbike or a four-wheeler. So, but it's like, if you require, you don't require, that is not known. Like, then we'll say that is Krishna's energy, and we'll use that for our sense gratification. So how do we understand that this is the limit? No,
Yeah.
not required.
But only you can really determine that, because you know what's going on inside your head and your heart. You know, so whatever facility, just like, you know, we see that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he went to Vrindavan in a car. And his point with doing that was to show that everything can be used in Krishna consciousness. And he mentioned, he also said that Srila Prabhupada had actually understood the principle of yukta vairagya. So the idea is like, if something is not conducive to my serving Krishna, then I reject it. But something is conducive for my serving Krishna, then I accept it. Just like, you know, we've got smartphones and iPads and laptops and all these types of things. But as long as we're using these things in service, you know, like you know, I don't use my phone for kind of like looking at nonsense on the internet. I just use it to communicate with devotees. So therefore, it's, you know, conducive. So you have to see it like that. Is this conducive to my cultivation of bhakti, or is it not? If it's not, and you know, it's like also we need to avoid that tendency of like, you know, okay, we'll do a little bit of bhakti with it, but then we'll do a bit of maya too. Try to avoid mixing the two. Just try to be very clear. But as I say, only you can really determine that for yourself, what is helpful and what's not helpful. Of course, in the beginning stage of devotional service, it's very helpful to have guidance from seniors, mentors, guru, things like that. You know? But as we evolve, then we also evolve spiritually. We also need to be able to have that discrimination where I think, okay, well, I'm not going to do this because it's not conducive. Like, you know, I'd love to have a Mac Pro, you know, like, but it's like I cannot justify spending $25,000 on a computer. But I can do the same thing with a laptop. You know, so you just have to look at it like that. Okay, nice, powerful, this thing, that thing, but can't really justify it. You know, to buy something like that would just be sense gratification. You know? But I can do the same thing with just a regular computer. So, you know, just you weigh things up like that. And sometimes for me to make decisions on things takes a time, you know, because I have to really, within my mind, justify, do I actually need this or not? You know? And of course, you can always find reasons to justify things, you know, but you have to really analyze your motive. And that's why you need introspection. You need to look within yourself to see what really is my motive here. Do I just want to enjoy having, you know, whatever it is? Or do I really need it? You know, like I'll give an example, I know you got a point. Like, some senior Vaishnavas fly business class, some fly economy. Some people criticize that. But if it means you fly business class and the other end, when you get to the other end of an 18-hour flight, you can just get off the plane and perform devotional service, great. I know, like myself, sometimes after these long flights, especially if I fly from London to Australia direct, when I get to the other end, it takes me 4 days to recover. So, you know, especially with senior Vaishnavas who are doing a lot of, you know, powerful service and inspiring people in Krishna consciousness, you know, you can see a justification for it. I'm not suggesting everyone should do it, but I'm just saying you can see there's a justification in that.
So, in some cases, it happens that, like, you don't want those facilities, but others are advising, you take this facility, you take this. So in that case, should we say no, or should we just accept it and try and check, or how do you approach that?
Depends who it is saying. If your guru says, then take. But if other devotees are just trying to encourage you, because sometimes it may be the devotees are encouraging you to take this facility because it justifies them having it. So you need to be mindful of those things. But if your spiritual authority tells you to do it, then you do it. Whether it's guru, temple president, whatever, they say, no, I want you to do this, then just do it. Gopal Guru, nice to see you again.
Guru, nice of you to share some of your experience. Because you've been around for a while, you've seen lots of devotees working full-time, etc. So at the beginning of the class, you're discussing how we see how these things that we're achieving and doing is by Krishna's grace. When we go into the work environment, it's kind of like this parallel universe that we're going into. I'm in Mayapur now. I'll be going back to work environment after this. I have to show that everything emanates from me. I'm absolutely fantastic. I'm first class. You should engage my company to do this. My staff should see me as the person to work for, or whatever it is that you do. So we spend so much time, 40, 50 hours a week doing that, and then for me it's very hard not to get contaminated thinking, oh, I'm crash hot.
Yeah.
So now you would have seen some devotees who would have successfully gone through this and some who may not have. So what tips do you have?
Well, for me, I just made a conscious choice probably about, 20 years ago, that I wasn't going to work in that kind of environment. I just made a conscious choice. I'm not going to do it. Even if I have to live in a grass hut, I'm not going to do it. Because I just don't feel that I have that kind of capacity to endure that kind of exposure to material nature. But if we're in this situation where we have to do it, it's just, okay, maybe the day-to-day stuff that goes on in the business is going to be hard to see how that's connected, but at least the fruits you get from the labor, then, as Krishna says in the second chapter, you perform your prescribed duty, but you're not entitled to further results. Never consider yourself the doer of the activity, and neither don't be attached to not doing your duty. So the thing is, like, whatever you do it for Krishna. That's the first thing. It doesn't matter what you do it for Krishna. Even there's an example in Fiji. I don't know if any of you ever met Vasudev, very nice devotee in Fiji, and he's Vasudev Jagannath is the Punja family in Fiji. So he had a supermarket, and in the supermarket they were selling alcohol. Actually had a chain of supermarkets, a wealthy fellow. He's passed away now. But there were some devotees who were saying, oh no, you can't sell alcohol. And so he asked Prabhupada about it. Prabhupada said, that's okay, just use the fruits to serve Krishna. And that way you don't become entangled. So it's the same as, like, you may be working in various work environments. If you try to take those fruits of that environment and use for your sense gratification, you'll become entangled. But if you use the fruits of that environment in devotional service, and that doesn't mean giving all your income to the temple. It means using it in Krishna consciousness in some way. Either you maintain your Krishna conscious family, using it for preaching, use it for book distribution, use it for prasad distribution, whatever. Just use the fruits. And don't use it for sense gratification. Don't go out and just get the latest movie or whatever, or get you pay your Netflix subscription or whatever. Don't use it for that kind of things. I've got an Amazon Prime subscription. I've never watched a movie. I just use it because you get parcels delivered for free. So it's just that you can have those things. It's just how you utilize them. So it's just a matter of, like, being, okay, how am I going to utilize this? And in that way, by utilizing those things in Krishna's, that's the only way you can protect yourself, is to use it in Krishna's service. As soon as you start trying to enjoy it, then you'll become contaminated and you'll become affected by it. It's the only solution, is to use it for Krishna and protect you. Okay, I think time to wind up. Chaitanya was looking at his watch. Must be time to wind up. Srila Prabhupada ki, Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda ki, Jai Nitai Gaur Premanandi Hari Bol.